Welcome back everyone to another episode of The Road Chose Me. My name's Dan, and on today's episode we are tackling Goog's track. This is a famous Australian track. We're actually heading dead towards the centre of Australia. I've never been here before. I'm really excited. Let me show you where we are. We were on the coast down here south of Adelaide. We've driven past Adelaide all the way around the coast, and we're about halfway across Australia. If I zoom out, we're almost exactly 2,000 kilometres from Sydney and 2,000 kilometres from Perth. This is as far west as I've ever been, so literally all of that I've never seen. But from here, we're actually going directly north towards the red centre. Goog's track here. It's only a pretty short track. It's only going to take us a couple of days. But what's great about this track is it has 363 sand dunes that we have to drive over. We're driving from south to north. The sand dunes run from east to west. So we are literally going to go up and over every single one of them. People say this is a really good mini Simpson Desert, which is fantastic because we've got that in our sights for a few weeks from now. So here we go, Goog's track, tons of sand dunes coming. I've just lowered tyre pressures a little bit. We're not getting into the deep sand just yet. That'll come tomorrow. So onto a track, out to explore. The flies have already found me. Let's go check it out. Goog's track into the heart of Australia. So here we are, we've just been on the track for like 15 or 20 minutes and we've come to one of Australia's great vermin-proof fences. So this is a dog fence, and this thing, I don't know about this one, but some of them stretch for like thousands and thousands of kilometres in an attempt to keep out rabbits, keep out dogs, keep out feral cats and all that kind of stuff. And so this one, we're heading into the Yumburra Conservation Park, and you can see how serious this is. This is a 6,000 volt electric fence. So I usually play with electric fences. I remember doing it in Nigeria when I was at the chimpanzee park. But I have to say, 6,000 volts electric fence, I don't think I'm gonna play with this one. I think I'm just gonna move the gate for Katie to drive through, and I'm gonna leave this fence alone and we'll keep on the Goog's track. But yeah, this is one of Australia's great vermin-proof fences where we're trying to keep out wild pests. Here we go. You can also see that it is actually raining. So it's been an extremely rainy time in Australia. Tons of places have flooded badly. It's been terrible. And here in the desert, it is very green and it has been raining a lot. I just saw some lightning in the distance. So we don't exactly know what kind of weather we're going to get on Goog's track. There is a bit of rain in the forecast. So yeah, believe it or not, it is raining in the desert even at this time of year, even though we're like April 15 or 16 or whatever it is. So unpredictable weather, let's see what it brings. So we've been going now for half an hour or 40 minutes, and you can see the kind of terrain we're traveling through. It's really dense scrub and it's quite green because it's been raining. Down on the flat sections, corrugations are a real thing. And then you come across the dunes, and this is what they look like. From a distance, they kind of just look like a rise in the landscape. And it's not until you get right to the top that you realize it's in fact all sand. And so quite a few of them now, I mean, we put it in four-wheel drive just to go up the dune, but none of them have given us any trouble at all because these ones aren't very steep yet. We're told the steeper ones will come tomorrow. But you can see when you get up on top here, this is like legit sand dune. even though it's all covered in all this vegetation, which kind of is a little bit deceiving, or you don't quite appreciate that that's what it's going to be like until you're really like at the top, sort of like 10%. You're like, oh, this isn't just a rise in the landscape, this is actually a sand dune. So absolutely breathtaking. And every time you get up on top of one of them, you get to have a bit of a look around and see that this is just endless. This is hundreds and hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Looks exactly the same. There is nothing out here, and it is stunning. Also forgot to mention, you can see, replace the sand flag with a new one. The company gave me a new one. They said they'd never heard of one breaking like that before. And so far so good. Seems 100% stuck on there, flapping around in the breeze. It's kind of funny, it makes the Jeep look a little bit like a radio controlled car, which I've always thought it's a bit like a go-kart being an automatic. So yeah, we're just cruising along. It's afternoon at the moment. We started pretty late in the day because we don't have all that far to go to the campground. And Goog's track, living up to expectations. I'm loving this. So we've just arrived at Goog's Lake, which is where we're going to camp tonight. And so this is our camp spot. I'm really happy to see the sand flag is still on the Jeep. We've got some sand here that we're going to roll the swag out onto. And then in the distance there, that is Goog's Lake. And it kind of looks like a salt pan from here. We're not allowed to drive on it. Wouldn't want to anyway. Culturally sensitive area, they say. But yeah, we've just had a stunning sunset. And this is camp for the night. It's actually, I'd say, our first hot night in Australia, and we are coming into winter here in Australia, so it hit 36 today, and right now outside it's still 32 Celsius, so it's still really warm, although it's crystal clear, so I expect it'll cool down a lot. And so who knows, but for dinner tonight we might even just chop into our watermelon that we've been carting around for a few days, keep it really simple, eat a ton of watermelon, refreshing. I'm even going to break out the shower bag. Let's live it up now that we're in the desert. Goog's track, day one complete. Good morning, everyone. Here we are, day two on Goog's track, and the rain has really set in. We had a massive lightning storm last night over there, over the end of the lake, and it was gorgeous. And now you can see we've walked all the way down actually to the lake, and yes, indeed, it is like a salt flat. So it's very much like Bolivia. It's very much like, I guess, the Bonneville salt flats must be. This really is crazy salt formations. And Katie tasted it and confirmed that, yes, indeed, it's very salty, as you might expect. So we're just checking out the lake here briefly. We've packed up camp already. We kind of sheltered and hunkered a bit from the rain and cooked breakfast. And not ideal. I didn't put the awning out because I was being lazy. Maybe I should have. And now it's time. We're going to head north on Goog's track, and this is where the bulk of the sand dunes are going to come in. And I think driving on sand dunes is easier when they're wet. I think they'll provide more grip than, you know, in the heat of the day when the sand doesn't have as much grip. But let's find out. I've just lowered tire pressures as well. I'm down to 16 PSI all around. I'm trying to walk that fine line. I want to go low enough to get good traction in the sand, but I don't want to go so low that I get terrible, terrible fuel consumption. Because a huge reason to drive Goog's track is we're practicing for what it's going to be like when we cross the Simpson Desert. How much fuel do we need to bring? How much water do we need to bring? Food, all that kind of stuff. This is like a little training run. So I'm really curious to see how the Jeep goes fuel consumption wise as we're going up and over so many different dunes. So let's see what the rain does. The forecast said that further north it should be clearing, so we might drive out of this if we're lucky, but it's coming down right now. So we're just 10 minutes out of camp there at Goog Lake, and we've come to the memorial here for Goog. And Goog is the nickname of the guy that actually built this track. So back in the 1970s, this guy just decided to push this track through the desert. And so basically him and his son and his wife, single-handedly, the family came out here and they pushed this track through the desert, sort of because they wanted access to some of the land that was further north. And so it was kind of like a family operation. This is not a government thing. This is not military. Really just a family built it because they wanted to. And so I guess this guy Goog was a bit of a character, and his son, his nickname was Dinger. He was also a bit of a character by the sounds of things. And so yeah, there's a memorial here for them to commemorate their achievement in building this track and what they did. And you can see, obviously back in the day, things were pretty epic out here. This was obviously a very harsh landscape, and incredible that this track still exists today, even though they pushed it through all those years ago. So we've obviously got the sand flag, which is intended to stop us having a collision when we're on the top of a sand dune. But of course, it's kind of like a last minute thing, because here we are climbing up a sand dune, and you know, if there was an oncoming car right now, we really wouldn't see it until the last minute. Hopefully you would see the sand flag cresting the ridge sometime about now, and both vehicles would be able to put on their brakes. You know, that's the theory. But of course, there's another way to avoid trouble like that, and that's using the radio. And that's why in Australia, CB radios are actually the law on so many tracks. So I've got the radio here, of course I mounted it in the glove box, and so about every 5 kilometers we've just been doing this. We say, Goog's track, solo vehicle, about 20 kilometers north of the campground, heading north. And so we're just throwing that out there into radio land on the channel that is designated for this track, just to let anyone know if there are vehicles moving south. And it is recommended that you drive this track from south to north, but we did actually just bump into people in the campground who are driving it the other way. So there are vehicles moving in the opposite direction. As you can see, there isn't exactly a lot of room to go past vehicles, so it's pretty important that you don't actually meet one on the top of a sand dune. Hopefully the radio is going to help with that. Here we are just coming up another smaller dune. Katie's obviously driving. Something we've really noticed on these aspects of the dunes, you get these huge big wheel ruts where I guess people are trying to drive up. You'll see the Jeep navigating them behind me. People are trying to drive up. Maybe they have the wrong tire pressure. Maybe they're getting some wheel spin. I don't know if people are even towing camper trailers, but you can see they make these huge big kind of wombat holes, some people call them, just, you know, lumps and bumps that then changes how fast we can drive. Versus when you get to the top, it's always really smooth. And then down the other side, down the northern aspect, the sand is really smooth and you can actually go much faster. So it was funny, the guys who were driving in the opposite direction, they said it was easy for them coming up all of the dunes because it's so smooth. It was on the way down they had to go slowly, versus we're basically the exact opposite. We've just stopped here on the side of the track to have some lunch, and the weather's clearing a little bit. It's still really windy, but the rain's held off. And so check this out. I don't know how close I want to get, but just here across from where the Jeep is a massive spider. So these things are called orb spinners, is my understanding. And you can see his web is actually huge. It's like 6 feet across and a few feet high. The camera's probably not going to pick it up, but his web is really, really intricate. And what he's caught down there just below him is a dragonfly, or it might be a grasshopper. But you can see this spider is nearly, well, it probably wouldn't cover my whole hand, but it would get close. And his butt is huge. There he goes, going down towards his dragonfly. And he's already sort of reacted to my presence, so I'm not keen to like get close enough that he might be able to jump on me. But yeah, these spiders are really rad. I didn't know they'd be out here in the desert. And it's actually the first wildlife we've seen all day. We haven't seen any kangaroos, any emus. We've seen tracks around the place, maybe foxes, little things like that. But so far, very little wildlife out here in the desert. But you can see it is immensely green. Really, really shocking to me. I had no idea it would be like this. So it's absolutely beautiful. We're just loving this. And now that lunch is finished, we're just going to keep heading north, keep climbing sand dunes, head on towards the end for today is called Mount Finke. That's where we'll be camping, and hopefully we'll get to hike up the mountain and have a look. So there we go, we've just arrived in camp for the day. This camp is called Mount Finke, and I'm just going to say the reasons are relatively obvious. So we hope to hike up there later, maybe for sunrise and for sunset. But for now, we've just set up camp, got the swag out. It got a little bit wet last night, but did a super good job of keeping us dry on the inside, just the canvas on the outside's a little wet. And so this is us for the afternoon. The trail was amazing today. We had such a good time. Katie did 90% of the driving. I was running around with my cameras like mad. So really good fun today on Goog's track. And here we are, you can see there's camp just there. And what I've just found on the ground here, or Katie found them actually, right near camp, that is the track of an emu. So an emu is like the huge big bird thing, looks a bit like an ostrich. And you can see it kind of has like 3 toes, I guess like a raptor. And these things look prehistoric. Their feet and their legs are just incredible. So pretty cool to know that the animals are out here, even though we haven't seen them today. And now we're just gonna chillax a bit for the afternoon. The flies have kind of found us, but the sun is beaming right there. We got some blue sky, but behind me, we're still hearing thunder. I saw some lightning. So we don't know what the weather will bring. It's been kind of on and off all day. This is the first time we've had full sun actually for the whole day, and I felt like putting my hat on for the first time. So anyway, camp's here. We're gonna relax, have some snacks, maybe hike the mountain. We'll see you when we cook dinner. We are just about to tuck into dinner here at our Mount Finke campsite. And so I just whipped up some burgers. We've got tomato sauce, mustard, cheese, lettuce, tomato. Katie put sprouts on hers. And on the side, we have a pepperoncini. These became one of my favorite all-time little snacks. If you've never had a pepperoncini, if you're Australian, do yourself a favor, find them in the supermarket. They're kind of like pickled hot peppers, and so they have a real after kick to them, and they're awesome. So burgers for dinner looks pretty good to me. We're trying to avoid all the flies, but even more than dinner right now, check this out. This is the sunset kicking off on Mount Finke, or behind Mount Finke. Clouds are all just starting to get color. This place is absolutely stunning. We're a little bit elevated up here. So I'm pretty happy with this view for dinner. See you guys in the morning. Well, good morning everyone, and what a stunning morning it is. Katie and I got out of bed way before sunrise and we've hiked up here. We're on the top of Mount Finke and the sun has just come above the horizon and it is spectacular up here. Everything glowing a little bit red. These grasses are just blowing around in the wind. The microphone's probably copying it a bit from the wind, so I'm being a little bit careful which direction I face. But I'll spin you around, check out how flat it is. I can barely see the trail. I mean, what a spot that we've managed to find ourselves in. What a beautiful way to start the day. This is utterly incredible. I'm going to sit up here for 10 minutes, enjoy this before I wander down for breakfast and a hot drink. Mount Finke on the Goog's track, definitely get yourself up here. All right, so we're just driving away from camp at Mount Finke. We had a quick breakfast, some coffee, some hot drinks, and really stunning place to camp. We loved it. And it turns out there's kind of 3 little campsites here in this spot. And there were some guys camping a few hundred yards away from us last night. We kind of knew they were there. We could just hear them. They didn't know we were here. And after we hiked down, they came over this morning. They were going to go up the mountain. And so we just chatted about the trail. They're coming in from the north, so they've driven what we're about to. And, you know, they wanted to know about conditions further south where we came from. And anyway, the part that I really loved is they were saying when they got into camp, they heard us on the radio calling out, you know, is anyone traveling south, because we don't want to have a collision on the dune. And they said they heard us when we were still 20 kilometers away from here. So good little kind of piece of info, good little reassurance that our CB radio does actually broadcast a full 20 kilometers. Who knows, maybe even more as well. But good to know that it definitely, you know, is working and working at distance. So when we are in the Simpson or when we are really remote, if we can talk to people out to 20 kilometers, that's kind of a nice reassuring thing to know. So we've got 7 kilometers now to get back to the main Goog's track. And then the guys said it gets a little rocky or a little more rutted and corrugated. And then it's only, I think, about 12 kilometers out to what is, I guess, essentially a real road, you know, not a 4-wheel drive track. And then we've got quite a few hours on that before we get back to civilization. We were told it can be very corrugated, very nasty. So I might air up a little bit when we hit that. Not 100% sure. But for now, we're just going to enjoy the last hour or so on Goog's track. One of the most beautiful places we've seen so far, I think. Here's a section with some pretty nasty kind of washouts and lumps and bumps. I guess everyone who's come up this way has rutted this pretty badly. So let's see what happens. Katie's driving. And so far, we've just been going the slow and steady approach, which I'm really happy about. With the tires down at about 16 PSI, the Jeep has been able to just crawl up literally everything. It doesn't even matter how deep the sand is. We can start even basically from a dead stop. We can get moving and keep moving. It never really gets wheel spin, which is great. So let's see what happens here. Katie's got the wheels turned and she doesn't realise she's turning hard right when she should be straight. So we got a little bit of wheel spin there, but pretty much it just walked up that, no problem. Heading north from camp here, we're driving along and I just saw this hole in the road and it stuck out to me because a bunch of the sand is piled up on top of recent 4-wheel drive tracks. You can see here in that edge near my shadow, the sand is on top of the 4-wheel drive track. So something did this recently And then it occurred to us, this is a malleefowl nest. And so you can see there's tons of evidence over there where this bird has been dragging all the sticks and leaves and stuff. And so in that nest, probably the bird has its eggs, and that's where it's keeping them warm. And actually, just when we stopped, we saw the bird just kind of 20 yards away in the trees. Obviously it wants to protect the nest, but not deal with us. And so the reason we stopped is I've just dragged these logs kind of just almost onto the track, and I tried to mark the nest because I don't want anyone to drive over it. That would be terrible. Malleefowl, they're actually endangered. We've been trying to see one since Big Desert, like 4 months ago. So it's really rad to finally see one. And I wish it had picked a better spot to build its nest. Hopefully those little eggs can hatch and it can be okay. And I'm sure that mama bird is just over there in the trees somewhere. So we should move on. We won't hang around any longer. But hopefully dragging those logs onto the track is going to stop someone driving over that nest. So there we go, we have arrived at the very end of Goog's track, and that was really impressive. I'm super happy we did that. We learned a bunch about how much fuel the Jeep uses on those kind of tracks. Tire pressures were really good on that. So I was down at 16 on all 4 tires, and I don't even really think the Jeep got wheel spin anywhere. Those dunes were pretty firm and it didn't have any problems. So that's great to know. Next time I might even go slightly higher on the tire pressure just to see if I can eke out a little bit better fuel consumption, see how that goes. The sand flag survived the whole trip, which is great. Definitely hit it on about 300 trees, which is less than great, but this one seems a lot sturdier than the last one, so I'm happy with that. And now we're at the end of the track. I'm gonna air up a little bit. We've got a couple of 100 kilometers now of gravel road, but we're told it's really badly corrugated. So I'll air up maybe to about 30 all around or something. So not what I would run on a paved road, but also not as low as I've been in the dunes. So yeah, Goog's track, highly, highly recommend. If you're thinking about doing it, if you're in this area, definitely check it out. Well worth it. That last section, it had quite a bit of sand and some bigger dunes just a little bit north of camp, the first part we had to drive today. And then the track just sort of flattened out and got rockier and it turned more into almost a road. But yeah, really, really stunning time. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed coming along on Goog's track. Thanks for watching. If you did enjoy the video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Now we're headed into the red center of Australia. Things are about to get super exciting. I cannot wait for all the adventures that come next. And if you'd like to get more content, if you'd like to get access to my high-res photos, you want to see my GPS track logs, you want to see everywhere that I'm camping as I move around the world, all of that stuff and more is over on Patreon right now for the people that are supporting me on Patreon. And huge thanks to them as well. As always, I couldn't do any of this if it wasn't for their support. So if you'd like to support me and if you'd like to get a whole bunch of content, check it out over on Patreon right now. Thanks again for watching. Have fun out there, and maybe I'll bump into you on the road.